Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Cyber Cage. This is a brand new podcast for Valorant esports and news and discussion. We're dabbling into other games lightly as well, but mainly our base series is going to be grounded in Valorant. We figured we'd hop on and give a new scene of, all the Valorant kind of echelon, that kind of new atmosphere, because everyone's doing podcasts right now. And, there's not a lot really for Valorant as we're recording this. And we figured, well, we'll throw our hat in the ring and see what sticks. But whatever the case, my name is Keglanek, and I'm here with my co-host, Casey. How are you doing today, Casey?
Doing well, doing fine. Thank you so much, Keg, and thank you for asking. Hope everyone listening is having a great day as well. And if you're not, I can only hope this will brighten you up a little bit. Give a new kind of something to listen to throughout your day. Now, I would like to say this is the pilot episode of the podcast, or episode 0 if you'd like to call it that. So we will be, over the next couple episodes, kind of smoothing out the issues and really getting things out of the way. But that's enough for introductions for now. You guys know who we are, and let's go ahead and get into the weekly news side of esports. Now, the number one thing that I wanted to talk about in terms of Valorant esports is going to be the Tier 1 for Nerd Street Gamers Showdown. It features 16 insane teams over the course of 3 days, which actually wrapped up about a week ago from the day we're recording this. We're recording this on July 5th. Wrapped up on June 28th, 2020. And that wound up with TSM, Team Solo Mid, taking first place and winning $25,000, which is mind-boggling for a new game such as Valorant.
More money than I've ever made.
Yeah, definitely. In the past year, I've probably made about half that, so that's nice. But regardless, though, I do have to say that with this being a brand new esport, it's insane that there's such a huge and gigantic prize pool already coming into play. Obviously, 50,000 isn't a lot compared to a lot of other already well-established esports, but it's almost about a month since Valorant's full launch happened.
Yeah, it's been a month and 2 days at the time of recording this.
Yeah, it is. That's absolutely mind-boggling with how far this game is coming. And I think we could put that in part with the fact that it is by Riot Games. Obviously, everyone knows who's probably listening to this. If you don't, they also make League of Legends, probably the number one esport in the world.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not a surprise that their FPS is taking off and taking the world by storm. And teams such as, T1, Immortals, FaZe, TSM, Gen G, Cloud9, they're all getting their stakes in it right away. Even 100 Thieves.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely insane.
100 Thieves has had a lot of interesting presence when it comes to Valorant so far. Later on, we're going to be talking about Hiko and what he thinks about pretty much everything so far. But before we get into T1 versus T1 Nerd Street Gamers, Casey, I just want to talk about the patch notes really quick. So one thing we're trying to do for the podcast is, because Valorant, like we said, it's only a month old right now. And listening to this, maybe years from now, if Valorant's still being updated, it's going to be crazy to see where the game is going to evolve. So some of the most important highlights really for patch 1.02 that came out, as we're recording this, is that Viper got heavy buffs. And we'll touch on that in a second, but Ranked came out finally in Valorant. And, that's crazy to us right now, Casey, but, down the line, that's going to be like a no-brainer. Like, at one point, there was Valorant without Ranked. Now, the beta had Ranked, if you remember.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that was fun, but the Ranked is finally out here now in the actual full game. And, surprisingly, the beta did not have this. A surrender option is there as well.
I do like the idea of a surrender option, honestly. I recently just encountered this for the first time the other day. A couple of teammates on the other team left, and my team, we were just absolutely pounding guys, and they had enough. It was about to be match point, so they were able to just surrender. And at that point in time, I don't blame them. Honestly, when it comes to something like that, and your team's just getting pounded, or, you're a 5-sack and you guys want to drop in rank or whatever, you should have the option to surrender.
I mean,
always be an option in games.
I don't like facing a team that ends up surrendering. I mean, it can get boring after a while if you're like, going flawless against them, right? But, there'll be some games where we're playing and all of a sudden you're just like frozen up with this surrender from the enemy team. And there's times where I've audibly gone like, oh, come on, man. Because I just want to keep playing. But let's talk about Viper really quick because Ranked and Surrender came out, but in the beta and for around the first 3 weeks or so for Valorant, Viper really had no presence at all. I'm pretty sure in most of the esports games that have come out, we haven't seen Viper at all. But this new update, they give her the snake bite and the fragile ability, which pretty much makes everything she has at the kit at this current time just more deadly. And there might be some meta changing options there as well.
Yeah, I could definitely see a lot of potential in meta changes there. As we evolve along the line and we play a little bit more Valorant, the game grows older day by day. We're going to see a lot of changes, a lot of feedback from the community. And mainly for Viper's sake, she is very underplayed right now. I know you said that Hiko talked about her a little bit, and we'll touch on what he said in just a minute. But for the time being, Viper is definitely an underplayed operator. And until we get alternatives to almost necessary like intel operators, main healers like Sage on certain maps, we will probably not see a whole lot of Viper play.
Now, this is the funniest part to me. Patch 1.02. This includes the beta as well. They finally changed the top rank in this game from Valorant, the game's title, to Radiant. That's like saying if your top rank in Counter-Strike was called Counter-Strike, or like if your top rank in, I don't know, League of Legends is League of Legends. It's finally not Valorant anymore as a rank. They've switched it over to Radiant, which, we were debating for a while of calling the podcast that, but honestly, I think the Cyber Cage just sounds a lot cooler.
Yeah, it definitely does. It kind of rolls off the tongue.
Like, oh, welcome to the Cyber Cage, brother.
Thank you, Hulk Hogan. Appreciate it.
Well, Hulk Hogan's a weird dude.
He's a cool dude though.
I was listening to this other podcast when I was in school, and my junior year, the very first semester, I was taking a sewing class. And so I would stay after class just listening to podcasts while making clothing. And there's this one podcast, I don't remember the name of it, but they would talk about the horrible marriages celebrities had. And Hulk Hogan's a weird dude, man. He's a weird dude.
Really?
Yeah, he's not a great person, but he's a good wrestler. But that's my whole life story up until now, Casey.
Well, you know what? Thank you for letting us know that, Keg. Greatly appreciate it. But kind of tone it back from the Hulk Hogan side of things. Kind of going back here, talking about Viper once again. Viper is, I've already said it twice in the podcast. I'm going to say it a third time. I'm going to try to not say it again. But she is a little underplayed in the sense that she is very, very much not used. The only time we really saw her in the tournaments, at least in the playoffs bracket of the probably one of the bigger esports events, the Tier 1 the Retreat Gamer Showdown, we saw FaZe Clan use her once on Split. Once.
Yeah, and it's crazy. It's crazy because when Viper's in play, no matter if she's on attack or defense, she absolutely controls any site she's on. Even on attack, you have to get to that site and she can still take it over or claim it as her own. And Cypher can do something similar. To an extent, you could say Sage or maybe even Brimstone can too. But Viper is a whole different ball game when it comes to just being able to be such an effective controller. And I think this update might have skyrocketed her, at least at the very least, her potential to being one of the best, like S tier agents in the game, like up there with Sage and Cypher.
Yeah, she could definitely become that, but I don't see it happening anytime soon, just as there's a lot more things that are needed. Most of her abilities, they're decay, so as soon as you get out of the ability, it's, you're slowly going back to normal. You're getting your health back, you're getting your armor back, all that stuff, especially with her ultimate, which it's good for, like a post-plant situation, especially on attack. Once you get that spike down, you can just light up the entire area and just sit in there, hold it. Once people get in there, suddenly you have the advantage. And that's why I think that she is a little underrated, but definitely just does not have enough potential at this time.
That's true. No, I can agree with that. That right now, I feel like you're right. She isn't great right now, but I feel like that's a lot of our faults. You know what I mean? Part of the update too is that in the beta and up until this patch 2, now keep in mind, if you're listening to this like 4 years from now, this is going to sound completely wild. When you use her, I'm going to sound stupid. I don't know the name of the ability, but when you use her Viper wall, you had to, at least at the very moment of time before this, you had to arch it over every object pretty much in the way. And so it was so hard to get like a long range wall going on with her. But after this update, it cuts through objects now, including like other sides of the map. So you can actually use her gadget without being, a master's in being a physicist or something, right? You can actually use her gadget without having a 500 IQ. And if anything, at the very least, it makes it just so her gadget is much more approachable for pretty much anybody other than, the top level chess players in the universe.
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean. I've encountered that a couple times actually, very recently. When you're walking up to a site, she has the ability to just cut it off from not even being in the site. She can be on the outside and she'll just send the a toxic screen through the wall, and just like that, suddenly it's like half your team is blind from seeing sight. And it's not necessarily about the amount of damage that it does, but rather, from what I've seen, just the control of the site itself. The toxic screen and all that stuff, you can jump right through it. It does not do a lot of damage, but you're not able to see behind you. So an enemy could come up behind you, they could flank without you seeing, and suddenly now your team's done. And the fact that they have the ability every single round is almost a necessity, I would say. It's definitely good to have when it comes to site control. I don't think it's something that necessarily belongs for the extended period of time, which is exactly why she has the recharge part of it. She's not able to keep that wall up for the entire time. It's only when she needs it, when she activates it, and when she dies, it's game over.
Yeah, I mean, you're totally right, man. I think when it comes to Viper as well, that wall, it just cuts off the circulation of the site so well. And other agents as well have that, like Phoenix has it with his wall as well. It's not to the same effect though. When you think of controller, your number one thought very soon is going to be Viper. But Nerd Street Gamers, right? I think, I'll be honest with you, Casey. I did not watch this broadcast. I didn't watch any of the T1 stuff. I'm awful. I'm terrible. I'm sorry.
You know what? It is perfectly fine because I can give you a lot of insight into that. I watched the majority of it. A few couple buddies of mine who I have been recently getting involved with were able to cast that. Namely, one person, Simo, who I have been talking to a lot recently in regards of casting. He's gotten some great opportunities to come up and cast the T1 Nurture Gamer Showdown, and I have to say that it piqued my interest to watch it, but the gameplay itself, a lot of the things that we saw were absolutely mind-boggling. Now, something that you wouldn't expect, kind of shifting tides here from the talk about Viper and patch notes, but rather back into the esports side of things. The number one thing that I wasn't expecting to see a lot is the lack of a Sage on a certain map. Now, Sage, in case you guys don't know, is the main healer in Valorant. She's the only one with heal abilities besides Arena and Phoenix.
At this
And
time.
that is, at this time, I imagine there's going to be some along the way very, very soon, because there's not a strong alternative for her. But she's the only person that's able to heal other people, and then she also has a massive amount of sight control with her long range ice wall, which just recently got nerfed to bring it down to 10 meters. I don't think that was in this update, but rather the
one before
previous
this.
one. Yeah. So you can't look at super far range to wall off part of the site, but it's still really useful. Then she has her slow orbs, she has her heal, and then she has her ultimate, which is to resurrect an ally, which is pretty useful, to say the least. But I think you mentioned a little bit, Keg, that they just kind of smashed a couple of agents into one and made that Sage. Is that what you said at one point?
Oh yeah, no, she's straight up broken, dude. I think my personal theory is that the beta for Valorant was rushed a little bit. And what I feel like they did was that they had a bunch of concepts for agents, but they didn't have maybe either the manpower or the time to develop all these different agents with these different abilities. And so they had one that could make a wall and slow people down, and then they had another one that could heal and revive, but maybe they just didn't have the time or whatever and combined it into one agent. And I guess that's okay, but she's just such a front-loaded character that it's almost like it hurts your team so much if you don't run her. Now, people have argued against that as well. My little theory, and I mean, yeah, it might not be true, especially because Valorant, all things considered, came out earlier than anticipated, and maybe they just stuck with it. I do think eventually though we're gonna see a Sage rework where they get rid of her slows and walls and give it to someone else.
I think we could see something like that in the future. But for the time being, at least in the non competitive side of things, she is seen in basically every single lineup on your team and on the other team. A lot of people will get upset if you don't bring Sage, if you don't want to play Sage. And a lot of people will think, oh, we got this easy if you're going against a team who doesn't have a Sage. But on the competitive side of things, TSM, Team Solo Mid, they never brought a Sage when they were playing Ascent in this last tournament. I want to, monitor their gameplay over the course of the next few weeks when they start playing in more tournaments and see how that shifts the meta. Because instead of bringing a Sage, it seems they bring double intel, or either a double intel or double smokes. And it actually kind of looks like both here. Their main lineup for Ascent was Cypher and Sova for the intel, the Brimstone and Omen for the smokes, and the Phoenix as their only real fragger. Now, that being said, they're not the only team in the tournament that did this, but they are the only team in the tournament that did this successfully. The number one other teams I noted on that also did this were Code 7 and CLT. They never won any maps on Ascent without Sage except for Code 7 once, who won it against a team called Team Ninja that got eliminated inside of the Group C bracket, but Code 7 got eliminated as well, so we didn't get to see any of that on the actual playoffs, which was the main highlighted and featured event. But TSM, like I said, the only successful team to do this, and the reason for this is because, smokes, they can give you a lot more ability to push into site. You're able to push into the site easier without having to worry about as many angles, and the defenders are going to have to expose themselves more in order to get into sight. And then to bring the double intel as well, the Sova is to, once again, push into sight. If someone is sitting in sight or someone is sitting in a weird angle, you'll be able to see them with his arrows to kind of pinpoint where they are. And then Cypher is beautiful for the rotates, because Ascent, there are a whole lot of lines and options for flanks, and it's something that you're going to need to watch out for. And if you're lacking on the manpower, sometimes Cypher's Stripwire can come in handy, just in the nick of time, or maybe his camera will light up, something like that. And TSM has seemed to have perfected that by, I think they only lost Ascent once against a team called Together We Are Terrific.
Sounds pretty
And
terrific.
I'll say they lost against T1 in the semifinals of the upper bracket, but then once they got to the grand finals, they were able to beat T1, and that's when TSM took the win, took the $25,000 first place prize.
Not bad.
But it's mind-boggling to see, from someone who is not as involved in the esports world, to see the lack of a Sage. I talked to a lot of my friends who didn't follow esports and they saw the gameplay. They're like, wow, this is crazy. I did not bring a Sage. But they're seeing how they perfected it, and now it's changing the minds and the minds of all the players inside and outside the competitive community. It's really allowing for a lot of paths to open up for different lineups, which is once again when Viper could come in, like you were talking about, Keg.
So let's talk about Ascent for a minute, because you mentioned how Sage was only not brought on Ascent. I don't like Ascent. I don't like the map whatsoever. Generally, like when you go into a map in any FPS game, at least for me, like Call of Duty, CSGO, Rainbow Six, anything like that, you have a really good idea of the layout and how to transverse the map. For Ascent, it really feels like there's a huge cutoff in mid. So if you're on the defending team, it's super hard to rotate, at least in my personal experience. You can rotate around, A long, going around to the catwalk area where people like to snipe on the attacking team, stuff like that. But when it comes to Sage on Ascent, I really feel like her utility is nothing but a detriment. And I can understand why TSM didn't want to bring it, because we got to break down, like you said, her utility, right? Because her walls, where are you going to use it effectively? So, like, you go B, you go through the B main, you go through like that little corridor where all the fish is. You could put the
Mm-hmm.
wall up there. That seems like a no-brainer spot. But once that area is walled off, unless you have maybe Phoenix or say Brimstone, for their mollies or whatever projectile they have, that's not really gonna do a lot against the attacking team. Now, really, as an attacker on Ascent, you have a lot of options in that situation. You're seemingly stuck, but worst comes to worst, you can just rotate around either through your own spawn or through mid. Now, there might be defenders out there to catch you down either on catwalk going to A, maybe they rotated towards your spawn in that catwalk area, or maybe they're even in mid, which would be the most common area for them to pick you off when you rotate. But the thing is, you still wasted that wall and you only get one per round. And, worst comes to worst, they can wait it out and just rotate through the wall once it goes down. So it's just you have so much mobility and so many different ways to transverse and rotate around the map. And now Ascent isn't the only map with this. Haven's the same exact way too. And you can see Sage on Haven sometimes. I honestly want to say it's 50-50. Generally on lower tier teams like T3 that I commentate a lot, or T2 at this point, since there's no real dividing bracket so far. I could just call it T2 if I want to and sound special. There's a lot of Sage play inside like Haven because the walls are still great for the cutoff on rotates because the defenders can rotate around a lot easier. But with Ascent, it feels like there's such a huge disconnect between the attacking and defending sides where you could slow it down too to follow up on that wall wherever you place it. But again, just the ability that the attackers have to rotate around, it almost just makes it kind of null in my opinion. Now, one way to mitigate that, the game designers felt, I think, was to put those, those robotic doors that go up and down. And that
Mm-hmm.
helps. That really does help a lot because it helps close off the site and add a little bit less breathing room for the attackers, which makes a lot of sense. But overall, the slow and the walls aren't really your best options for Ascent, and that's already half her utility gone. Now you can get the heals. The heals are going to be great no matter what the map looks like. It could look like a giant sphere, and the healing would be great. But the revives too, let's say, mid usually goes down first. That's usually the first part to go away or give out on the defensive side. If you resurrect someone in mid, there's most likely going to be a follow-up kill going off of that again. You put yourself as Sage at risk. You put the person you're reviving at risk. And unless someone's there, like a third person's there for a follow-up to take down who might be able to take out down Sage and the person being revived, it's not a great situation to be in a lot of the time. Now keep in mind, you could get that revive off and have someone kill that other person, let's say near the attacking spawn and catwalks, getting that revive. That's great. You're also sacrificing 3 people to do that. And that's gonna leave a lot more pressure for the attackers to get that site and be hurtful for the defenders. So again, like in general, like what can you do with Sage really on Ascent? There's so many better fragging and more aggressive options. You have Reyna, who can heal like you said, Casey. You have Phoenix, and I guarantee you there's going to be many more self-healers to come.
Yeah, definitely. It's an ability that definitely goes underappreciated. The amount of ways that Phoenix is able to heal himself is really nice. He can molly himself, he can wall himself off, and standing in his own fire is something that heals him up. While Reyna, on the other hand, you have to rely on getting a kill before you're able to do it. Because once you kill someone, their orb will spawn in, and you can heal yourself from that, or you can go invisible. I know a lot of people already know the gist of how Reyna works, but seeing as she's also the new agent that just recently came out with the map Ascent,
That's true. Very true. I forgot about that.
there's still a lot of room for her to be tweaked, to be reworked, buffed, nerfed, whatever you want to do to her. But right now, at the time being, you need to kill someone. You have to rely on getting a kill. And if you're
So
already low on health, you can't just wide swing someone to get that health out. You will die.
I want to jump in here real quick and ask Casey, what do you think about her Leer? And for those, who might not be as familiar with Valorant, Leer is Reyna's ability that I think it's like the Q button. I rebound everything. But she sends it out and it blinds anyone within that can look at the eye. And the enemy has to shoot it out to take her down. But they're completely blind. Do you think that's overpowered? I think it's overpowered.
Well, it's a mixture of the two. And the reason why I say that is because, yes, from one aspect, it definitely is overpowered. You're able to, blind basically the entire area and swing at your choice. But if there's anything more than just one person, you're kind of screwed. One person shoots the orb, you go to swing, and suddenly there's two guns staring down the barrel of your face. You have
True.
to really calculate how it's going to work, since you only get two of those per round if you purchase them. I believe it's about 200 credits.
I don't know, it's
So
something.
it's not aggressively hurting your economy to buy both of them. But it's the big old but here. There are downfalls to every single ability. And this is the downfall of Reyna's. If you are swinging on more than one person, unless you do it immediately and just have the best aim possible, which a lot of these competitive players do, you're not going to find a lot of success with it. It's going to be a tough uphill battle. And then, if you're swinging into the room and there's three people there, well, you can basically kiss it goodbye. Maybe if you get one pick, it has to be an effective pick. And when it's in such a close quarters situation like that, and you have to do it instantly, you don't have time to evaluate. Okay, so that one's a Sova, that one's a Brimstone. There's the Sage. Which one do I want to shoot? You have to find the first person that's there and shoot them. If you get a Phoenix and there's still a Sage and the Brim on board, was it really worth the trade a fragger for a fragger? Probably not.
Yeah, you got to keep in mind how well that Reyna's doing throughout the entire match as well. If you're Reyna, let's say your silver Reyna in your gold solo queue for ranked is going 0 and 12, they're probably not doing what they need to do because Reyna is a very selfish agent. And so is Jet. They're both really selfish. And your whole goal, I mean, there's a lot of utility when it comes to Valorant, and a lot of other FPS, tactical games like CSGO and Siege are the same way. But what makes them unique is that their whole kit and utility is based around making those enemies' lives miserable, just taking them down as soon as possible, and just racking up those kills. And that's something really unique to Valorant that I like. Well, Overwatch has that too, but overall, like, it's really unique to Valorant, and like, if you can do that well, you might as well not be there.
Yeah, I can 100% agree with that. There's going to be pros and cons to every single game, every single agent, every operator, every single thing that you want to find. There's going to be the pros and cons to it.
Yeah, something with
And
Valorant, there's not going to be a magical combination. Like, we do see those metas. We'll talk about metas later as well, but we do see a lot of like really stagnant metas in those previous games we mentioned. And with Valorant, I don't think that's going to really happen. There are some preferable characters right now, but it seems like that might be changing down the line.
that definitely could be the case. But there's also a kind of meta being forced by the hands of the developers as well. Valorant recently released an article, it was about 2-3 weeks ago, called The Creation of Split. And to sum it up, they basically talked about, how Split was made, how they came across it, but they did say that every single map they make, they have like, certain lineups, certain metas in mind. They have certain play styles. Kind of like how when they made Bind, they wanted to just take out the idea of mid control. So there's not as many, I wouldn't say not as many long range gunfights, not as many explosive gunfights in mid. It's all about taking site control. It's not about taking mid control. It's about the small rooms that you have to worry about, not the giant area in the middle. And like I said, they have the meta in mind, so that makes me beg the same question. On Ascent, did they make Ascent in mind with the lack of a Sage? Because the beta was out for quite a long time, and they got a lot of feedback on, certain characters may be broken, certain characters may be unplayable, overpowered, underpowered, whatever you want to call them. And I'm very curious if they had it in mind to play the map without Sage. Make a map where they have to take Valorant players out of their comfort zone and not keep Sage as a comfort pick. Because that's what it seems to me, at least personally. That's just on
I
my end.
genuinely did not think of that. I think that's a really good point, Casey. Uh, yeah, I mean, on one hand, I really don't like the idea of developers forcing a meta. But I'm assuming because I'm not a game developer, I don't make multiplayer maps. I think every map has their own shtick in any FPS game. And these maps in Valorant are no exception. I just think it's much more prevalent in these games that we can see it because it's a lot more. I don't want to say the maps aren't dynamic. It's that we can see what the whole gimmick is right in front of our faces. With the four maps that are currently available in Valorant, with Split, the two sites are split up really far away. Um, well, that's a really lame description of it, but we'll talk about Split in a second because you have that article in mind. But with Bind, it's like you said, no mid control, and the main rotate for the attackers and sometimes the defenders as well is having teleports going between the two sites just outside of it. Haven's whole gimmick is having almost, I want to say almost entirely mid control, but they have three different sites that the attackers can go to and plant that spike, and I hate that idea. And lastly, Ascent is kind of a combination of all three. And like you said, yeah, having no Sage is really interesting. But my main concern, I think this can tie into the creation of Split too, is that what about when they start making new agents? Because we already had Reyna come out, and if the audience doesn't want to hear about the leaks, there's already at least like three or four leaked agent tidbits inside the game's code right now. That's gonna add a lot of power creep for potentially those new characters or even the older ones because that's gonna force a meta and become really stale potentially really quickly, Casey.
Yeah, it definitely could. And actually, before I elaborate on this, let me just backtrack really quick. I missaid something. They didn't talk about necessarily forcing a meta, but forcing certain operators to be played or not played, which is kind of like along the same lines as a meta, but it's not forcing an entire setup. It's forcing maybe an opt for another agent instead. But I do have to agree with what you say. Every map does have the kind of different aspect about it, and I'm excited to see. I've read a little bit about the leaks, and I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm not going to talk about it here, just because I know a lot of people don't want to hear about leaks. To each their own, but I think it's going to be very interesting. I hope that the developers don't push a full-fledged meta because, like you said, that will get very, very stale.
I mean, I just can't wait for the Dolphin Man to come out. King of the Dolphins. He's gonna have a tidal wave and go ride right over Viper's ult, dude.
Oh yeah, beautiful. But speaking of King of Dolphins, actually switching one word, King of the Hill. That is the exact words that the developers used when thinking about the creation of the Split. Now, their main thought, I'm going to read basically right from the article here. For Split, the question focused on whether or not we could create an off-site position that was essential to defending or capturing each site. To put it more simply, could a tactical map play like King of the Hill? Now, what that means is they want to create a location kind of like mid that's not directly on site that is essential to control. Now, if you've ever played Split, you know that mid, while it's useful, it's just good to hold for rotations. The number one thing that you want to take, though, when you're pushing on either site, is to keep control of either the A or B tower. That is such a powerful and strong position. There are a lot of flanks there. You can come up through ropes, different staircases, 2-3 different ways to get up there. But the number one thing you want to do is make sure you hold control of that tower because there is such a aggressive line of sight coming from there. You can see basically over the entire site except for the default plant spots on both A and B. And that is why they are those default plant spots, because that's the only place you can't see from tower. And if you have control of tower, you can plant anywhere on A, and as long as you hold tower, no one's going to be able to get that defuse off unless they use one of the walls from Phoenix, Viper, or Sage. If they're able to wall it off or even smoke it off, then suddenly it's going to force the hands of the attackers who planted the spike down to make a move. But at that point in the round, once Spike's already down, chances are a lot of that utility is already gone. Which is why it's so important to gain control of those towers, and that is basically winning directly through gunfights and possibly some smokes or flashes. That's probably the most you're going to get out of those maps, and that is where the idea for the King of the Hill came in. If you want to look up the article yourself, it's on playvalorant.com. It shows a bunch of different map designs, different thoughts, and all that jazz. It's not that long of a read, but it's an interesting read, to say the least. I would like to talk to the developers of Valorant, see what they had in mind when creating the other maps, but I imagine those articles would come out in due time as well.
Who knows? Maybe the cyber cage will become big enough for us to invite them on for a time, huh? That'd be
Maybe.
pretty
Well, the,
cool.
the the invite is always open. It's just about
Oh
them,
yeah.
wanting to take it.
Oh man, but yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Split, in my opinion, is my favorite map in the game, both to play and to commentate. That whole King of the Hill aspect is really fun and unique. And I mean, I think all the maps in the game still have issues. It's just like how far you want to rotate and stuff, and just that whole echelon, especially pushing B garage, is just a nightmare in general. I think I understand why it's a nightmare. You want to be able to have that King of the Hill, mid push, like you said. And that might be
Yeah.
the whole reason why it's pretty bad, but I do think, and we did see a minor tweak to Split's mid. The boxes were kind of, I guess, disappeared. Like the whole wall was shoved back for the full release of Valorant from the beta. But I wouldn't be surprised going forward if we see more tweaks like that. I know the latest patch had some map tweaks as well, but honestly, I didn't really see those occur too much in the actual game. But I think those were just fixing some like collision bugs and stuff. Yeah, clearing angles and a bit more straightforward in the following places. So yeah, it was just some minor tweaks, nothing really too noticeable.
Yeah, and just in these recent patch notes, they actually launched a bunch of different map tweaks for Haven, Ascent, Bind, and Split. Split being the least of those. Obviously, from the beta to launch, they tweaked a lot more. But just recently, they tweaked some more corners, more staircases, just to give an advantage, or to not necessarily give a solid advantage to either side, and to protect from peaks a little more. And Haven was one that actually got quite a lot. Obviously, being the biggest map with 3 sites, it is something different.
Yeah, I mean, Haven definitely needed it, and I still don't like the map at all. I think having 3 sites is just a really weird idea for a game where competitively, you want to have everyone at the same advantage, but suddenly changing one of the foundations of your genre for a single map is just really odd for some reason. I just can't wrap my mind around it. I just think it's competitively not fair, but people are making it work, and we maybe someday we'll see it outside of the rotation. Who knows?
Yeah, we will see it. And I know that the ranked or competitive playlist was banned for a very finite amount of time, just as long as they fix one of the glitches on the map. But we haven't seen it out of the actual esports competitive scene yet. Every single map is still in it because there's only 4 maps at the moment, and that is exactly why the pick and ban system is a thing. If you as a team do not feel comfortable playing a map like Haven, so out of the genre, so out of everything, kind of like how Bind is the only map without a solid mid, then you have the opportunity to ban it. You have the opportunity to, keep it away. Say, hey, I don't want to play this map. And I think that's just fine, at least for the time being. I imagine as we get more maps, we're going to start seeing different types of picks and ban systems, and same things with operators. But that's going to be a whole nother story for another episode.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, especially with the agents. I know a lot of tournament organizers right now are debating about how they want to remove maps in between matches or sets. And pretty much the consensus, I think, right now, at the very least, with 4 maps, is that you can't really do, ban, ban, pick, 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 if that makes any sense, because that would require 5 maps. So right now,
Yeah,
it's just kind of, pick and pick. That's pretty much how it is right now, and maybe 1 ban.
yeah.
But,
I believe it's. I could be mistaken. On best of ones, I believe it's just each team bans 1 map, and then it's decided between the 2 maps.
yeah.
And then on best of threes, it's uh, pick, and then the third map is just the decider. But I could be totally mistaken about that. I don't remember exactly how it works.
No, I think you're right. It's just, like, I don't have it in front of me, so it's hard to visualize what it actually happens, because it's so ingrained inside of us, too, already.
Yeah, actually, there was someone who made a map ban GG for Valorant. I do need to look into that a little bit more, but it is an interesting take for all of you tournament organizers, league organizers. You can go ahead and check it out. It's on the Map Ban GG website. I believe it's a beta right now, but I could be mistaken about that.
God, I
Uh,
love Map Ben.
yeah, yeah. No plug, by the way. This is not a plug. This is just
I wish it was a plug.
what
Give
we
us
use.
money. Oh man, yeah, map ban is a great source. A lot of other games use it as well. It's kind of like a cheat sheet almost for a lot of production. You know, I don't want to give away too many industry secrets, just some. But map ban is a great resource if you want to have make your production a little bit higher quality without having to do too much work.
Yeah, that's definitely true. It makes things a lot easier for everyone, and especially with everyone being home right now because of the whole COVID-19
Oh
situation.
God, when will it
Uh,
end?
yeah, at least for uh, Keg and I, both in the United States, it is looking like we will be under quarantine for a little while longer. If you're from the European, APAC, Oceanic, Asian, any scene out there, I'm sure your guys, everyone's country is handling this differently. You may be doing it. You may be changing. Might be able to go to land soon. Who
Yeah,
knows? But at least for us, it's not looking like that anytime soon.
yeah. If you're in New Zealand, I'm very jealous of you. You don't have any cases, and you can go out and party and play your Valorant lands all you want. But unfortunately for us in the United States, I won't be able to see Casey for a while. We won't have any Rainbow Six, CS:GO or Valorant lands anytime soon. I don't think we would want any Smash lands, right now, anyways, with everything going on.
Oh, that's. Oh,
But we won't get into that too much. But it's unfortunate. But not having Valorant or Siege lands, especially for our Siege backgrounds, it really sucks. But hopefully down the line we'll be able to actually have them more consistently again. Hopefully, at least next year we can have lands.
yeah, hopefully. And I don't know if anyone's actually played that game, Plague Inc. But just like every single Plague Inc. simulation, Greenland is like the one country that hasn't been touched by this. They have 13 cases, and all 13 of those have confirmed recovery. And that was there hasn't been a case since May 29th. So
I'm gonna
just
move to
like
Greenland.
simulations, we're gonna have to go to Greenland for all of the lands. Apparently, it's going to be one hell of a journey, but it's going to be a lot of fun. I can assume.
It's like how a lot of the Siege production for the Pro League is in Poland. We can just move to Greenland and have a in studio production there.
Yeah. Well, formerly in Poland, that was ESL.
Yeah, very true, very true. Now it's
Face it.
supposed to be in Vegas, but it's all
Yeah.
online still.
Yeah. At
Which
least most Americans face it. Everyone has their own kind of different things right now. But
Southeastern Asia is the no, yeah, is the only one that still uses ESL. But Valorant came out at a very weird time, all things considered. And what
yeah,
makes them unique is that they came out not only during the COVID-19 pandemic, but they came out ahead of schedule in the COVID-19 pandemic. Especially in the movie industries. I don't know about UKC, but I'm a film student. But every movie known to man pretty much is being delayed until 2021 at the earliest. And so you would think, games would be delayed too, but no, they're not. Valorant came out ahead of schedule just recently. Oh my god, what's it called? The Last of Us 2 just came out.
that was
Everything
delayed by a bit though.
that was delayed, but that was before COVID, I think, right? Or was it at the very beginning?
It started getting delayed right as the COVID spike started happening.
Yeah, and Cyberpunk 77 at the time of recording still has not come out yet and has been delayed once again to September. But yeah,
Wait, really?
yeah,
Oh,
November, September-ish, I think.
it's
But
November 19th.
November 19th.
Yeah.
But yeah, Valorant is interesting, and it's also the only esport to really come out during this pandemic too. Hyperscape's beta just came out, I think, yesterday at the time of recording this, but I don't really see Hyperscape going anywhere. So we're just gonna stick to Valorant.
Yeah. And a couple things I want to touch about actually were what's going to happen with Valorant as it comes out, because right now this is the first major esport that's coming out on the front line of like a major pandemic. We haven't seen something of this magnitude in a very very long time, and the last time something like this happened, we did not have esports. Esports were not a thing.
Now we had like
So
World War I and like the
yeah,
Black
that
Plague.
stuff.
We had Victorian houses in England.
Yeah, a lot of confusing timelines, but nonetheless, this is the first major esport that's being really launched during this time, and that's going to change a lot of things up. Now, the number one thing I would be curious about is how is it going to take off? The answer was already given to me, though. It's by Riot Games, the probably largest esport game studio in the world, besides maybe Activision for Call of Duty. I would say Riot Games is probably the largest purely because they run everything for League of Legends. They're the creators of League of Legends, the arguably biggest esport, and them creating an FPS is what's going to kick it off in every single region.
Oh yeah.
Them introducing this to the world. So that's why, less than a month after its official launch, we have huge tournaments between, tier 1 Nerd Street gamers for a $50,000 prize pool, with the first team taking 25,000. Like I mentioned at the beginning, first place prize was 25,000, and from there it went 15,000, 5,000, 5,000 for both third and fourth, and then nothing else from there below. But that is still a huge prize pool considering what's happening in the world. And then, will it become, top of the top tier 1 esport?
I think so.
I imagine next, 12 months, we're going to see it skyrocket to the top. Once everything opens back up, we're going to see Valorant LANs happening like never before.
Oh yeah.
We're going to see a huge amount of those LANs. And even in its beta days, Valorant didn't launch until after the pandemic started. So we don't have anything to fairly compare it to, but if we know anything about Riot Games and what they've done with League of Legends, we're going to see not only absolutely insane talent lineups, but insane venues, insane production, and a whole lot to do, which I'm very excited about.
Well, it's gonna be great because we're gonna be part of the production too. Hopefully, hopefully by this time next year we'll be top casters or top production, whatever happens to us. Hopefully we'll be there sinking our teeth into it. But I mean, a lot of other games are suffering right now during this pandemic. Overwatch was already dying before 2020, but how I think Valorant might be the final nail in its coffin competitively.
It could be. Obviously, Overwatch is a game in its own, and it will always have its own fan base. But I don't want to trash talk it by any means, but the way it's being handled is not the best, at least in the past few months from what I've seen. I've never personally been very involved in the Overwatch scene.
Same.
But this seems like a good mix between CS:GO and Overwatch. Basically, what everyone says, Valorant is its own game, but those are two games where I derive the most similarities from. It's still a 5v5 plant the bomb or kill the people situation, but it has those operators or agents, as they are called in Valorant, that provide a whole nother usage of utility. It's not like CSGO where everyone can buy the same things, where everyone can get the same utility. It's one agent, one person, you're good to go.
And a lot of pros from Overwatch are moving over to Valorant as well, and Siege and CS:GO pros as well. I mean, off the top of my head, Sinatra from Overwatch may have single-handedly killed the esport because he left to go play in Valorant. And I mean, honestly, I can't blame him. I really, really can't blame him.
Yeah, wanting to do better for yourself is nothing we can blame anyone for. And with the way Valorant's being handled on a PR level and everything else, it's already looking a lot better. Considering that everyone is working from home as well, you can only imagine what it's going to be like once everyone's in studio, once everyone's in the same building, really tossing ideas back and forth and not just in a voice chat, kind of pounding out what they want to do. They're able to work on it together effectively. And that's going to be the same for team houses as well. TSM, they've signed a team, T1, Immortals, FaZe Clan, they've all signed teams. Once they get into team houses, it's going to be a whole nother world. There's going to be a whole nother level of competition. And once we get these guys and gals, because there are females in the scene.
Yes.
Once we get all of them into a LAN tournament in a LAN environment, we're going to see probably some of the best Valorant gameplay we have ever seen. For those watching it live there, they will see history in the making in terms of getting a first-person shooter really across the globe. Because I watched a video on it a while back. There is a first-person shooter that's similar to Counter-Strike, but it's a developed by an Asian developer. I can't remember the exact name.
Was it Ready or
I
Not?
should look it up.
Or was it the one getting sued?
I'm not too sure. It's the top FPS game for esports, but a lot of the people in North America, Oceanic countries, Europe, they haven't heard of it as much.
Oh.
Because it's mainly based over there. It's called Crossfire. It's a game that came out in 2007 and has 312 million players.
Okay.
But
damn.
we've never heard of it because there is a huge language barrier, and it's mainly developed for tournaments over in China and surrounding countries. So with Riot having the expertise they do to make an esport across the globe, I can only hope they do Valorant the same. Something that will really unite the FPS communities, because there's a lot of split. There's there's Siege, there's Call of Duty, there's a numerous other amount of first-person shooters, CS:GO, but those aren't things that we see over in other countries. We see games like Crossfire that we have never heard of.
Yeah, I would be really surprised if Valorant dies down anytime soon. CSGO has been going on since 2012, and Counter-Strike in general has been going on since, I'm pretty sure, since I was born. I mean, I'm 21 right now, and I think it's 20 years old. I could be wrong. It might actually be 21. But I would be very surprised if Riot mishandles Valorant. Now, they had some missteps in League of Legends over time with patches, which is fair. But since Valorant has come out, we've seen, I think, 3 different patches. And I won't speak to, Runeterra too much because I don't really know too much about the legends of Runeterra. But it's definitely not to the same caliber Valorant is already. And it's doing so well. Like, think about it, right? Rainbow Six Siege, because we looked it up while we were making the production plan for this script for this podcast. I think the very first winning for season 1 of Rainbow Six was like, what, $1,000 per player? That's cool, but
about
$350 per player. That's terrible. But now
I think that was fourth place though.
Fourth place. Okay, fourth place. Fair enough. But that's not even 4 digits. But already teams in Valorant are getting $25,000 in total, which is fantastic to see. Now, I'm sure, minus all the economics and how esports has evolved a lot since 2015, sure. But this is Riot Games, this is an FPS, and there's already a lot of backing behind it, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon.
Yeah, I don't imagine changing anytime soon as well, but something else we also have to talk about, when you're talking about, payments and, how it's taking off, how the players are being taught, this was the Tier 1 Nerd Street Gamers Showdown, which was part of the Ignition series sponsored by Valorant, but it's not directly from, it's not directly Riot Games. It's not the official series. This is a numerous amount of series taking place across the world. And the third and fourth place prizes, like I said, were $4,000 or $5,000. 5 players, it's $1,000. If you don't count coaches or the org cut, so that's still not a whole lot. But that was less than a month after Valorant's full launch. Whereas I need to double check, but this was year 1, season 2 of competitive Siege was August 6, 2016. That was 8 to 9 months after the game Siege had launched already.
Wow.
And the esports scene was already being established. The prize there was $62,500 for the total prize pool. But that was split amongst I believe that was every single team.
That's crazy.
Wrong. Yeah, I'm definitely wrong. It was split amongst the top 4 teams. But nonetheless, number 4 team, they won an estimated around $350. Now, this is all stuff I'm getting off of Wikipedia. This is not something I directly talk to someone about. So take everything I say in terms of payment with a grain of salt. But this is just the most official page I can find in terms of player payout.
I mean, yeah, it's hard to argue with that, I think. Whatever they get paid, it's definitely not as much as the people in Valorant are getting paid now, which is nice. That is to say, people in Siege at the top level are getting paid pretty nice. But I think it's going to be neck and neck for a long time. And considering the game's been out for a month, compared to the 5-year legacy of Siege, it's pretty good.
It's pretty good. There's plenty of potential in the future. But nonetheless, speaking of potential in the future, Keg, do you have any last notes you want to kind of wrap up on? Any last things you want to talk about?
Oh man, I don't think I really do for this first episode, all things considered. I think future episodes will definitely go a little bit longer than this one. I think I need to have some coffee before I start a podcast. This is the first time I've ever done a podcast where I wasn't a guest star on, so I didn't realize how, draining it is, but it's fun. It's really fun. Overall, I think next week we'll probably discuss patch notes again. I'd be surprised if there isn't one into the next week. And I think there'll be more tournaments going on. I'd love to discuss next week, maybe the T3, T2 tournaments I help participate in. And I think, if there's an audience for this, I think they'll love what we are doing here at the
I
Cyber
couldn't
Cage.
I could not agree more, and that is why I'm happy to be doing this just the same. I'm very much excited for the future of Valorant esports and where everything's going to go, where this game's going to go. It may not be my favorite number one game of all time, but it definitely has plenty of potential, and it is going to become something great. But nonetheless, thank you all for tuning in, and I really hope you guys enjoyed. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at the Cybercage. That's going to have each of our personal Twitters in the bio as well, at Keglanek, at Takesi. I'm going to see how to spell them there. And hope everyone has a wonderful day. Be sure to tune in next week where we're going to go ahead and start with the official episode 1, no longer episode 0. Take care, guys.